Sam, who is introducing you? Hope you're already. Yeah, hope you're should just help to introduce me. Thanks, Obiora. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Trust we had a restful night. I trust we're ready for the session as well. Anchoring today's session will be no one else than our loving, ever active, ever smiling HR, none other than Mr. Samuel Adenipekun. Samuel, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Obiora. Thank you for the hype. It's well appreciated. Please help me share my slides. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. We'll be talking today about mastering the hearts of radical candor. And, um, in my research, I really found candor to be a very, very important thing for an organization to actually grow, as a business, as people, and as an organization collectively. And this is of our theme for the month, which is the renaissance of radical candor. So please sit tight and enjoy the session. Okay, so thank you, Bira. So the goal of radical candor is to actually create a culture of open communication where colleagues can give and receive feedback without the fear of reprisal or the fear of a backlash, as the case may be. And Radical Candor is based on two components, which is caring personally and challenging directly based on the work of Kim Scott. Kim Scott is or was a former executive of Apple and Google. And caring personally means that you show that you care about your colleagues as people, not just as employees. And also challenging directly on the other hand, directly means that you provide feedback that is honest and direct without sugarcoating or avoiding difficult conversations, right? And this has a lot of benefits, which we would dive deep into as we go on in this session. So I'd like us to look at a bit of definitions from people, from thought leaders, on radical candor. So number one by Kim Scott, obviously, is um, radical candor is the ability to challenge directly and show that you care personally at the same time, like Kim Scott. Also by Ben Horowitz, he defined radical candor as about telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. For Ed Catmull, he defined radical candor as the means of creating an environment where people are not afraid to speak the truth. And for Sheryl Sandberg, she defined radical candor as the ability to give feedback in a way that is both kind and clear, specific and sincere. So let's talk about what. So if you look at these definitions, you would see that one thing is common, and that is you caring about the other person, right? And you know there's a bit of a difference between candor and radical candor. Obira, please go to the next slide, which we'll see in just a minute. So candor is or refers to the quality of being open, honest, and straightforward in speech or action. It is generally characteristic of a person's communication style and can be applied in various contexts. Candor can be positive or negative, obviously, and can be expressed in different ways, such as through feedback, criticism, or praise. But radical candor, on the other hand, is a specific philosophy that combines candid communication with caring personality about your colleagues. It was developed by Kim Scott, like I mentioned earlier, and it involves building strong relationships with colleagues, being willing to challenge them directly when necessary, and providing feedback in a way that is both honest and supportive. So from here also, you can also see that it involves caring. So the idea that you need to be professional at work. You need to, keep your personal life at home and be professional at work is it's not actually very correct, and it's not going to help you develop yourself as a person, right? So you need to actually bring yourself to work and also care about other people. Which is why I would also emphasize this because this the act of care is actually one of our core values. Obira, please go to the next slide. So I'd go deep to explain, why care is important, in radical candor. So care is a critical component of radical candor because it allows a genuine connection between the person giving feedback and the person receiving it. So when you care about someone, you are more likely to understand their perspective, you're more likely to understand their motivations and their challenges, right? It's essentially you putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Um, and this empathy, helps you to communicate feedback in a way that is respectful considerate, and helpful. And when you don't care about someone, it can be difficult to actually communicate feedback effectively. You become very aggressive, and you can come across as cold, insensitive, or dismissive, right? And this can lead to a lot of barriers, which include defensiveness, resistance, or even hostility on the part of the person receiving the feedback. So, in contrast, obviously, if you do care about someone, you're more likely to approach the conversation rather than so you're more likely to approach the feedback as a conversation rather than a confrontation, and you can express your concerns and critics in a way that is thoughtful, honest, and constructive. So let's dive deep into radical candor. Let's look at the components of radical candor. And here it says radical candor is a management philosophy that involves giving feedback to colleagues in a direct and caring way, like I mentioned. The goal of this is to create a culture of open communication where colleagues can give feedback without fear of reprisal. And it is based on two components, caring personally and challenging directly. Caring personally means showing that you care about your colleagues as people and not just as employees. And challenging directly also means that you provide feedback in a way that is honest, direct, without sugarcoating or avoiding difficult conversations. So in order to foster a culture of radical candor, you obviously have to be open to having difficult conversations, right? And not fear any reprisal or aggression or conflict, as the case may be. So there are four quadrants that would help us understand radical candor better, and help us to understand or see where we are in terms of giving feedback or being candid with our colleagues. Obira, please go to the next slide. So we have four quadrants, right? And there are two axes, right? The vertical axis is the care personally axis, also referred to as the give a damn axis. The horizontal axis is the challenge directly axis. So in order for you to have or for you to be radically candid, you have to obviously care personally and challenge directly. So we have other quadrants that is around this. So for example, if you don't care about the other person and you just challenge directly, it means you are obnoxiously aggressive. And which is actually the worst, if you don't actually challenge directly and don't even care personally or you don't give a damn, it is the manipulative insincerity, right? And we would look at this in detail very soon. I have a couple of videos that we're going to watch. And the last one is ruinous empathy, which is when you care personally but you don't challenge directly. And I don't even know which one is worse. For me, in my opinion, I think it's the ruinous empathy because it's very dangerous and it can impact a lot of things. So yeah, let's move to the next slide. I have a video for us to watch in about 3 minutes. This is about the story of Kim Scott as she explains, our first experience, with radical candor and how it helped her improve our presentation skills. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. I think that given last night's events, I'm going to change the title of this talk to Be a Kick-Ass Citizen Without Losing Your Humanity. The idea of radical candor is something that will help you do the very best work of your life, but more importantly, from my perspective, it'll also help you build the very best relationships of your career. It's a simple idea, and to explain what I mean by it, I'm just going to start with a quick story about a time when my boss, who was Sheryl Sandberg, criticized me. I had just started at Google, and I had to give a presentation to Google's founders and CEO about how the business was doing. And like any normal person in this situation, I felt a little bit nervous. And so I walked in, wondering how I'm going to get these people's attention, and all I had to do was say how many new customers we had added in the last couple of months, and Eric Schmidt, the CEO, almost fell out of his chair. So I felt like the meeting had gone pretty well. In fact, I felt like a genius. So as I'm leaving the meeting, I walk past my boss, kind of expecting a high five or some form of congratulations, and she says to me, "Why don't you walk back to my office with me?" And I think, oh shit, I've done something wrong. I don't know what it is, but I'm about to hear about it. And she says to me, after a little bit of praise, she says, "You said an awful lot. Were you aware of it?" And I sort of breathed a huge sigh of relief. And I kind of made a brush-off gesture, and I said, "Yes, I know. I do that. It's kind of a verbal tic. No big deal, really." And she said, "Well, I know a great speech coach. Google would pay for it. Would you like an introduction?" And I sort of make that brush-off gesture with my hand again. And I said, "Did you hear about all those customers? I'm busy. I don't have time for a speech coach." And she stops. She looks right at me, and she says, "When you make that gesture with your hand, I can see I'm going to have to be a lot more direct with you. When you say every third word, it makes you sound stupid and insecure." Now she has my full attention. And some people would have said that it was mean of her to say that, but in fact it was the very kindest thing she could have done for me at that moment in my career, because when I did go to the speech coach, and now that I knew I sounded stupid and insecure, I did go see the speech coach, I realized she really wasn't exaggerating. I did say every third word. And the weird thing about this was that I had been giving presentations for my entire career. I had given hundreds of presentations over the course of 15 years, and nobody had told me how often I said It was as though I'd been walking around for my whole career with my fly down, and nobody had had the courtesy to tell me, "Why don't you zip your fly up?"
Thank you, Obiora. So yeah, that was Jim Scott's first encounter with Radical Candor, and it was really, really profound, and as you can see, it helped her improve the way she gave presentations, and she reduced the way she was saying I hope I don't say too much in this presentation so that I don't get a backlash, or a very candid feedback. But yeah, so please don't start counting, I beg. Thank you. So we'll now look into some examples of each of the quadrants that we've mentioned. So we'll start with Radical Candor, and we'll go across the quadrants like that. So Obiora, please go to the next slide and play the next video. Thank you.
So I'm just going to tell you a few quick stories. First, radical candor. A lot of people make a mistake with radical candor, thinking that they have to take a bunch of time to be radically candid. But the origin story for me with radical candor happened in less than a minute on the street of Manhattan. I had just gotten a new puppy, and I loved this dog, had never said a harsh word to the dog, and as a result, it was out of control and had no idea how to behave. And it jumped in front of a cab. I pulled it out of the way just in time, and all of a sudden, my heart is thumping in my throat, and this man, perfect stranger, standing next to me, looks at me, and he says, "I can see you really love that dog." That's all he has to say to move up on the care personally axis. Doesn't have to know my name, doesn't have to have schmoozed with me, just, "I can see you really love that dog." And then he says to me, "But you're going to kill that dog if you don't teach it to sit." Now he's got my full attention. Then he says, "Sit." The dog sat. I had no idea the dog knew how to do that. And I kind of looked at him in amazement. The light changes. He looks back at me and he says, "It's not mean, it's clear." And he crosses the street and leaves me with words to live by, right? Didn't have to take him forever, and he changed my life in just that brief amount of time. So radical candor can be quick. Doesn't need to require a lot of.
Thank you, Obiora. So from the video, I was able to deduce that that example was more of the ruinous empathy, and also the being radical candid axis, because she was very empathetic about the dog. She really cared about the dog, which almost killed the dog. But also the person that was trying to be candid with her was able to also demonstrate why being radically candid would help. And so again, like I mentioned, it occurs when you care personally and challenge directly. And obviously the consequences of radical candor can be positive and transformative for individuals and organizations. So let's look at the next video. Yeah.
So I'm just going to tell you a few quick stories.
No, the next one.
Next, obnoxious aggression. I will tell you, I will assert for the record, I'm not an asshole, but I do occasionally behave like one. And I bet all of you have just occasionally done the same thing. So this also comes from a time shortly after I joined Google. Amazing I lasted there as long as I did. I had a disagreement with Larry Page about an AdSense policy, and I wrote an email to 30 people that said, Larry claims he wants to organize all the world's information, but if it'll make us a buck, he's willing to create clutter sites that muddle the world's information, right? Not my most politically astute move. Worth taking a second to understand why I did it. I did it because I believe there's a special place in hell for people who kiss up and kick down. But it doesn't mean doing the exact opposite makes a ton of sense either, right? Caring personally is something that you owe to every human being you interact with, either at work or in life. So that was my foray into obnoxious aggression. As with all things, the cover-up is worse than the crime. Larry didn't actually mind that. In fact, I learned later that he thought it was funny. But what?
Thank you, Obiora. So that was an example of obnoxious aggression, and this occurs when you challenge someone without showing that you care about them. And obviously, though that didn't happen in this very example, it often leads to defensiveness, anger, or withdrawal, and obviously also leads to your colleagues or the person receiving the feedback being or feeling attacked or insulted, and obviously they may become resentful or uncooperative. So yeah, this can damage relationships, erode trust, and create a culture of fear, which is bad. Please let's go to the next slide, Obiora.
What happened next was trouble. When instead of moving up on their personal axis, I moved over in the wrong challenge directly axis.
No, Obiora, can you allow the video play from where it's supposed to start? Don't. Thank you.
What happened next was I got into real trouble. When instead of moving up on the care personally axis, I moved over on the challenge directly axis. I bumped into a couple of days later. A friend of mine was like, "Wow, that was pretty stupid, Kim." And so instead of looking into it and actually understanding the challenge that he had made and caring personally, I just went and said, I lied. I said, "Oh, Larry, I'm sorry about that email. I realize you're right. I'm wrong." And Larry's got a pretty good bullshit meter, and he kind of looks at me like I'm a pigeon that pooped on his shoulder and walks off. So a friend of mine patted me on the shoulder and said he likes it better when you disagree with him. So don't move in the wrong direction when you realize you've been a jerk.
So this is an example of manipulative insincerity, and it occurs when you don't care or challenge directly. And obviously, this leads to false behavior, and the consequences are similar to ruinous empathy, which we're going to see in a minute, which can create a very resentful and it can create an atmosphere of mistrust and confusion, basically. So let's go to the next one, which is the last of the code.
What happened into real. Last but not least, ruinous empathy, the quadrant where most of us make most of our mistakes. To explain what I mean by ruinous empathy, I'm going to describe probably the most painful moment in my career. I just hired this guy, Bob. I really liked Bob a lot. He was funny, he was quirky. We were having one of those management offsites and playing a ridiculous management get-to-know-you game that nobody dares say is a waste of time. Bob finally said, "Why don't we just go around the table and confess what candy our parents used when potty training us?" Weird, but fast. Then, weirder yet, we all remembered Hershey's Kisses. And for the next 10 months, every time there was a tense moment in a meeting, Bob would will just the right candy to the right person at the right moment. So he endeared himself to all of us. There was just one problem with Bob. His work was terrible, absolutely terrible. I learned later he was putting pot in the bathroom, which maybe explained all that candy. But anyway, I didn't know it at the time. I kept trying to buck Bob up with false praise and say, "Bob, you are so smart. This is not quite how you do it." And I had no idea how bad things were. And 10 months later, it became clear to me that if I did not fire Bob, I was going to lose half my team. And when I sat down and told Bob, explained Bob the situation, when I finished, he pushed his chair back from the table. He looked right at me, and he said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And as that question is going around in my head with no very good answer, he said, why didn't anyone tell me? I thought you all cared about me. And I realized I'm having to fire Bob for the mistakes that I made. 6 really important mistakes. I didn't ask him to tell me what was going on, and I never asked him for criticism. I was bribing him to toke up in the back. No, I didn't find out, and I should have. I never gave him praise that was meaningful. I basically just gave him praise that was a head fake. I never told him when his work wasn't good enough. And worst of all, I failed to create the kind of environment in which everyone would tell Bob what was truly good and off the rails. And all I could do in that moment was make a very solemn promise to myself I would never make that mistake again, and I would help everyone whom I worked with never make that mistake again. And that is why I spent time to come up with this Radical Candor framework, which I hope will help you all never to.
Thank you. So obviously, the results often the results of it that liked and shares when you're in the conference, obviously you would or you would give vague or indirect feedback or be overly positive and supportive even when it's warranted. And obviously this can lead to lack of clarity and accountability and missed opportunities for growth and development. And it is actually ruinous from the name of the ruinous, and it could damage. Obviously we saw here that Bob was about to be fired, and until when he was giving feedback. So thank you so much. Let's go to the next slide. So okay, so what is being candid important? Number one, it is for improved communication. Number two is for increased trust and maybe better performance, and also reduce conflict. So when I talk about improved communication, I mean it creates an environment of open and honest conversation where people feel comfortable to express their thoughts, ideas, and thoughts. So this obviously can lead to better collaboration, problem solving, and decision making within the team. Also, in terms of increased trust, this is important because you have to show you personally about your colleagues and team members by providing direct and honest feedback. And people begin to trust you because they know that what comes from your mouth is actually very solid. And better performance. This is important because it provides clear and direct feedback, and obviously identify your areas for improvement as a person in terms of your skills, abilities, for example, how I present, and more, right? Which obviously would lead to better performance and a higher quality of work. And in terms of it helps with misunderstanding and conflict from escalating, right? So within your team, you are able to give yourself honest and direct feedback. You would hardly have issues escalating beyond your team, right? And that would be conflict in the long run. So yeah, let's look at how to put this into next slide, please. So how do you radical right? Or how are you going to be able to be candid with your colleagues? First of all, you choose the right timing and setting for giving feedback. If you recall in the first video, Sheryl Sandberg actually took Kim on a walk. So obviously it was able to find the right place, the right time to give the feedback to her. Obviously, if she didn't everyone during the presentation, it might have come across as being maybe aggressive or being dismissive of her or what she has done. So it is first of all looking at the right time and giving the proper setting for giving the feedback. So the second one is be specific and give. Don't use vague language or generalizations. The third one is avoiding attacks and focus on the behavior. Always try to avoid the person, but address the behavior. Number 4 is listen actively and respond with empathy. Number 5 is checking to make sure that the feedback is understood and acted upon. And finally, the great recognition when it is there. Next year. So what are some of the barriers to Radical Candor? There are a bit of barriers, but I just want to touch on 3 of them for the purpose of this conversation. So number 1 is fear of conflict. Obviously, many people are uncomfortable with giving feedback because they don't want to be given at all. And to overcome this, you would have to to overcome this, create a environment that is safe for giving feedback. Bring feedback and candor as or a positive tool for growth. Number 2 is culture that we have different backgrounds. But again, it is also important that you respect other cultures and tailor feedback to the individual's cultural background. So you want to understand the person before to give your feedback, basically. And the last one is power dynamics. This also makes it difficult to actually practice radical candor, and your colleagues may be reluctant to actually give feedback to their superiors for fear of negative consequences. And to focus in the plan to actually create a culture of feedback. So we're going to look at the employees that they spoke or they were talking about feedback in the organization, and let's how we're able to do this. For those of us who don't know, candor is something that really that's a very part of the culture at Netflix. A culture that fosters responsibility and freedom.
What is feedback like at Netflix?
Does feedback apply to all levels equally? Feedback, okay. Remember my question is like, do you have feedback in your current company?
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like I didn't really know how to answer. I feel like I give feedback, but I'm not really sure. And then I arrived here and people are like, yeah, I have feedback for you. What is going on?
When I first joined, I remember, because I read so much about it before you joined Netflix, you like literally read the culture memo and you take it all in. I was like, do you have feedback for me? I would walk up to everybody and be like, the team, please tell me, do you have feedback for me? And eventually I realized that it happens so naturally as part of all the conversations that you have with your teammates on the one-on-ones. And the bottom line is, it's how can we work better together and how can we improve things?
And I do think in general, talking about feedback, I think it's good that it's not that dramatic here. It's something that is constantly ongoing instead of having major performance reviews on a biannual basis and so forth. And that makes it so much easier. It's working amazing, or how can we deal with these things?
For sure. And I think the essence of it is always constructive, right?
Exactly,
I think it can sometimes seem, when you read the culture, that it's this constant sort of, people are watching what you do all the time and people constantly have opinions about you. But in reality, it's just very constructive notes on just how to work better together. Yeah, it's not as scary when you really understand that the feedback is really given to you to make you grow as a person and as a professional and to really make you go further into your work.
The one thing that I would caveat, though, is that I've noticed myself that it's, for me personally, a little bit more difficult to give feedback to my superiors, to my manager or, even higher above, as compared to people I manage or, my peers.
Do you find a way to make it feel better or easier?
No, I do it. I just think it through, I think, in more detail. I take more time in really, wordsmithing the language to make sure that I don't accidentally write something that could be offsetting.
And for me, that mindset when I had just joined was something that took a while, no? I was like, can I just really directly go to give feedback to a VP, or can I go and tell somebody, I think we didn't do this in the right way, or I don't agree with the decision?
I think
The communication style makes a big difference also on how you convey the feedback, and also if we all agree that it's from good intent, then it makes it completely different.
It was surprising to me how open that was, like how people like actually want that kind of connection with their team. And if you didn't have it, I think it would be a miss as a manager.
If you think about a team, so once you get into that dream team mentality that we're all trying together to make things better for Netflix, then it becomes so natural to give feedback.
I think I've grown a lot since I've been here, thanks to the feedback that colleagues have given me in many aspects. Yeah.
Thank you. So let's look at the last video. So this talks about the results of building a culture of candor, right? Obiora, take it away.
We have worked really hard over the years to create an environment where we can talk to almost anybody about almost anything. Probably the largest hurdle getting over this issue was me. I was the one, because I'm a peacemaker kind of guy. I like everybody to be getting along. I like everybody to enjoy one another, to not have any conflict, because I don't like conflict. Most of us don't like conflict. So I had a good friend of mine years ago named Tony Donato. His leader came to him and asked him to be a part of an upcoming class he had been certified to teach. It's called Crucial Conversations. I just fell in love with the concept. I began to read about the course itself. And so the rest is history, and now it's part of our everyday lives at ACR Supply, and anybody who comes to work at our organization now has got to go through the 16-hour course. As I began to make that shift over the years and really began to improve myself in the way that I was able to build safety, build trust, and allow people to share and disagree with me, that began to change everything for the organization.
Troy loves open and honest feedback, even if the open and honest feedback is pointed at him. I think when you have an owner or president who has that kind of mentality, everybody kind of lines up behind that. C12 is instrumental to a culture where healthy conflict thrives because of the accountability that takes place in your groups, the accountability that key players and CEOs can hold each other to. A culture of healthy conflict doesn't just come off. It's got a lot of work and a lot of effort to sustain. That accountability is instrumental.
False harmony can be deadly to any organization. And I realized that because we were not having conflict, it was having the reverse effect, and it was actually beginning to negatively affect our culture and the way that we work together as a team. Just the concept of how having conflict in an organization, healthy conflict, and holding well, but even if you passionately disagree with one another, can have such a positive outcome in your organization, on your bottom line, of your people, the growth of your organization. That was the opposite, but now after this training, and now seeing it, I see so many positive results of better relationships, better outcomes in business, better bottom lines, better everything. So it's been really exciting to see that. Philippians 4:8, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is beautiful, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, let us on these things. And so that whole mindset and having the right mind, the mind of Christ inside the workplace to really love on, encourage while we hold each other accountable, I think those are some principles I think have really helped our organization.
Thank you, sir. So yeah, from the videos that we've seen, we can see the results of being very candid. Obviously, the goal here is to improve individuals as improve individual performance, and also help us develop as an organization, and help us grow, and help us deal with our issues, and turn them into turn feedback into group. So yeah, this brings us to the end of this session. I'd like to get contributions from and also I'd like to hear about what we intend to do as people to ensure that we become more candid with ourselves. Does anyone want to speak? Does anyone really want to speak? Am I allowed on in? Okay. Okay. Go on.
Okay, thank you for this teaching. So I was trying to look at what will have been hindrance to we having a kind of radical candor before I got to the aspect of cultural differences. And in a way, while the teaching was going on, I was trying to look at what has really been an hindrance to we having a kind of society back. I'm generally that our culture has a lot of issues in which we see the elderly holding the numbers from giving feedback. Especially a general thing in which whatever the elder do is correct. You can't challenge them. You can't correct them. Like, I'm not saying that we should look for them and talk their things, but at the same time, that's actually it's affecting us to some extent. And a teaching like this, kind of like this, is helping us such that we want to be in their own space. We need to know that for us to have an inclusive and a very human society, we need feedback from them. Right, so there's also this people have this view in which they feel that they don't feedback because whatever has been right in their whole thing. So it's kind of okay, but it's not a cultural influence or kind of undertone that sets the way we get feedback or give feedback, in which they are totally disconnected from saying what they feel is right, even when they are saying quite important and good. Thank you much for making this kind of conversation. Right, so on the personal note, I'm learning, but at the same time, we may have to about that and do that will actually help when it comes to how you give feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taiwo. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't speak, which is really wrong. But yeah, thank you so much for your contribution. I see your hand is up. I see you speak. Please go on.
Hi everyone. Thank you for the session. I learned a lot. Personally, I feel both giving and receiving. But I see that it's constructive. I mean, you can give feedback in a way that does not target what the video said, does not target an individual person, so to speak, or at least. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really feel that. Do you still want to chime in?
Yeah, well, I mean, I get the concept and all of that. I think I have a question which maybe you may not be able to answer. I'm not sure if I will touch on it because I lost the connection a bit. The real question is, in our culture, as can we participate? Right? I know that the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right, where people do what they like, how they like, right? But for my millennial, as a we grown into like we have to hold your tongue and swallow it. But you might do trouble because you said something that's not right. I know of it, but as actually and genuinely without the bash or no.
Okay, that's my question. I'm not going to be able to do just what I find difficult, but we make conscious efforts as an organization to ensure that we don't bring that culture into us and management and leading this culture. Them everybody who is below them, they ensure to ask for candid feedback. Thank you so much. Hi, Jade. I see your hands up. Thank you. Just go on.
Morning, Samuel.
Yes,
I felt very God would have a lot to say. So I was going to speak to activities, which is I feel like don't come to anyone, but like you see ways that you can address them. And I know that we've been very affected by our upbringing, but I think that when we become aware of this in our system, in our structure, and in our work, we kind of need to how can I step away from it, or how can I do differently? And I also think that in environments, for example, if you think that you're in a